Can you please state today's date, your name, birthday, and how long you've lived in Hernando County?
Today's date is August 27th.
That's right. And your name, birthday, and how long you've lived in the county?
It's Julia Jinkens, and I've been here 50 years.
And what was your birthday?
January 29th, 1925.
All right, and what part of Hernando County did you live in for the majority of your life growing up?
We lived near the what is now the Hernando High Football Stadium.
And is there anything that you can think of that really stands out in your mind that was really a formative part of your younger years growing up?
Especially when we came here, we moved here from Clearwater. So you can imagine 50 years ago what it was like here. It was quite a shock to me when we'd come from a busy town in Clearwater, and this was rural, and I mean really country. And I remember Route 50 out there that is now just Spring Hill and all of it. It was just a two-lane road, really. Didn't see any. When we got off of 19 to come into Brooksville, there was nothing for those 8-9 miles. And now look at it. It's just busy all the time. But I saw that change. And then when I came in, we got involved in schools here. That was another thing that I wanted to be involved with, and I'm glad I did. Because of that, I got to know so many people.
What year was it that you moved to Hernando County?
1963, in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And it was rural until Deltona, Mackle Brothers moved into, bought some of the land out there in Spring Hill. And it was, I can remember seeing signs Deltona put up, and I don't know where out there, but they were the lots for sale, $10 down and 10 a month.
Wow.
Can you believe what it became though? But
now, when you say $10 down and 10 a month, was that cheap then? Was that reasonable?
Yeah.
Was that expensive at that time?
At that, well, it was. Let's say it was a good bargain.
A good bargain.
Yeah, and people knew that coming down from the north, and maybe they came down maybe one summer to Florida, and wanted to retire in Florida, and that was an investment for them. They may not have come for 10 or 20 years or more, but that was really a good investment for them, I guess.
So you remember Spring Hill when it clearly was rural.
Yes.
Brooksville compared to Spring Hill. Have you seen Brooksville develop in the ways that Spring Hill has?
No, I have not. I think what will happen, and I hope so, Brooksville is going to end up the historical part of this county, and the commercial part will be at Spring Hill, because history, you can all merge together, history, the old times, and the new, and I think that's where it'll go. I think this has got lots of potential.
In which ways did you see the school system develop? Can you give us an example of what it was like when you first joined, how you felt about it?
One story stays in my mind. Middle school my son was in, and a Coach Varn come up to me one day as I was sitting there at football practice and said, you look like a lady that could get involved in the booster club in this town. And I said, well, I've never been in a booster club, but he said, why don't you go to a meeting and see if you'd like it. So I go to the booster meeting on a Monday night, walked in the room, and there was not one woman in there. It was all men. Do you know how out of place I felt? I sat at the back of the room, and I watched those men. Tommy Bronson was the president that time, and I watched him run that meeting, and he'd say to somebody like to Jim Wilkes, you get this done, and then he'd say to Sam Lofton, you get this done. And he was a good leader. And I thought, I don't belong in here, this is all men. So I went home that night, and I thought, maybe the women could do something separate from the booster club. The coach at that time came up to me and said that night, you know, Miss Jinkens, I wish we could feed the boys before the game.
Right.
He said, most of these young men here go over to the 7-Eleven and get a candy bar and don't go home because they're all going on buses. And he said, could you get something organized to women to to feed them. And that was my beginning. And I got the donated, the hamburger and the baked potatoes, and what we cooked some of it at the high school. We fed those football boys before the game, and I think they still do it yet today. Then I went to the civic clubs in this county. Oh, wow, nice. Kiwanis was first. I know they wish they'd never met me, but Kiwanis and Rotary and Junior Service League, those three, I'd ask for a donation, maybe $25 or $50. They always were so helpful, and from there, it grew into, I took on a project called Sober Celebration that was given to the seniors free, and they had prizes, and they'd come down. I rented the fairgrounds for them and had a band, and the night they graduated, I wanted them to have some place to go, because in those days there was no, I'd come from Clearwater area, and that town opened up for them down there, but here they did nothing. These kids either went to the orange groves or went to private homes. They had nothing. And I thought, let's just get them all together one more time for 3 or 4 hours and give them something they don't have to pay for and can win something.
Almost like a graduation
It was called Sober Celebration then. And do you know they still do it? And I did it 30 years. And I got to the point where I just couldn't go out and see all the people I wanted to.
Wow.
But you know who came to me was Kiwanis and asked if they could take it over. And I couldn't have a better body of people, because I knew they would continue. You're keeping these kids off the road on graduation night, and that was very much needed and something to do.
Feel like a community leader yourself?
I never did.
I
just plunged in when I could see a cause. It was a selfish thing, because I really enjoyed doing it. And I still makes me mad at my age. I can't get out there, but it just, the energy isn't there anymore. But everybody would respond. And the town then, smaller, and we decorate the uptown. That was fun all day, to go up there and put purple and gold all over town and bring us together.
Is that right?
And then look how the history has evolved. I just went to something the other night. Mr. Kimbrough was part of this. The 15 and 16-year-old boys went to the World Series, and they had a big, and they won that year. It's 1983, and we had he got a Dixieland band I remember, down on the square down there to play for them, and when they won, they had it coming back too, and those boys were welcomed back. But that was pulling a whole town together for doing one cause. With one high school here then. We split in 1976, was the last graduating class from Hernando High. There was 400 and some in the class.
Wow.
The next year, Springstead came into being, and then, they split.
Now, coming from Clearwater, clearly a bigger city, there seems like there was a lot more to do for fun out there. So when you got up to the county, what did you do to entertain yourself?
Well, there wasn't much. The one thing that stays in my mind, there was a portable skating rink in downtown Brooksville. It's where McDonald's is now. And it was on a stage, a platform, or something, not a building then. And I don't know how they handled it with weather, with the rains and all, but somehow that was, and drive-in theaters, of course, that was our...
And about what year are we talking again?
I'm talking 67, 68 now. You're into that era. And they had, the movies and a roller skating. That stays in my mind, but there wasn't much else. You made your own. I think nowadays it's all technology, isn't it? But you had to go and make, like they've said, kick the can down the street. You had to make your own amusement, I guess.
So most people out in the county, did they strike you as folks that would be born and raised here, or were they?
Yes.
They're very happy with their county.
Yeah, there was family, and they grew up here, and and you got to know them all. And at first I resented that it was a small place. And I remember how I changed when I was trying to find a church that I wanted to go to here. One Sunday I went to the little one on Bell Avenue, Presbyterian Church. And an usher came up to me and said, "Miss Jinkens, I know you're new here in town," and he said, "I understand you have a son on a submarine." And he said, "I hope that this wasn't the one that was sunk off out in the Atlantic." And I looked at the usher of that church and I thought, now, isn't that interesting that he cared that much about my son? New York City, I'm not sure they really would care that much. But he was Tom Bronson then, the one that ended up being the president of the booster. But I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, I like this, sharing good and the bad with people in a small town. It was concern is the word I'm trying to say.
Do you have any specific memories of major events here that really stick out in your mind over the course of time you've been here?
Yes. Oh, when I came here, there was no musical productions, of course, or anything like that. Now, I'm glad that you jogged my memory some here. Ridge Manor had a community center out there, and it's still there, I believe. And I went to a musical one night, and they were putting on a dinner theater, and when I got through listening to those young, talented high school children, under the direction of a woman that I've dearly learned to love, Lee Gordon. She was the director. And they put on a show that night, and I thought, in a small town like this, and she was going to the trouble of getting these kids, they waited on us, they delivered the food to us, the tables, and they did all the work, cleaned up, and did the talent too. And I thought I would love to get involved with around the musical part, and she was part of the church I went to too. And I latched on to her, and because of that, I never left her for 30 or 40 years. She was such a professional, and made the dinner theaters and the shows productions that she put on in this county were outstanding. Broadway couldn't have many nicer. And she always said to me, "There's talent, Julia, in every community, but it takes that director, it does, to bring it out in them." And she surely did. And she formed a group called the New Nostalgics, and they did a patriotic musical out of Springstead Theater, one of the first ones. And Desert Storm, if you remember that, I can't remember my years, but that was going on then. And she didn't want anybody charged for it. And finally we got her to say, well, could we just charge $3 to get people in? And I thought, I don't know if they'll really support it. And that opened my eyes the night we did that out there. It was standing room only. Now, people from Spring Hill had come from New York, never had heard of the New Nostalgics, but they wanted live entertainment. They were hungering for that, and they came. And I remember she got all over me. I oversold 30 tickets. They had to stand in the back. It was over 600 were there, and they asked them to do it 2 or 3 nights. It was a production. But that woke me up thinking, live entertainment, there's a need for it in this county. And from there she grew and did all kinds of productions.
Were there any other memories that you can think of that were, fairly major events for the folks here in the county?
If you ask for me, there was a hurricane came through Miami, Andrew, Homestead, horrible. And it just it must have looked like a World War III down there. It was awful. And believe it or not, something that was priceless after that was ice. Now, I know that sounds so simple, doesn't it? But they needed ice desperately down there in Miami. And I remember working with a manager, because I was in food service all my life at the school, and Mrs. Hall was manager of Hernando High Kitchen. And she called me and asked me if I'd come up and help her bag ice. That there was a truck going down to Miami, they wanted to fill it with bags of ice. They had the prisoners lined up to load the truck over at the citrus plant here in town, which it was getting people together to do something. And I remember looking at her that night as we were bagging the ice, and I said, Mrs. Hall, what are we doing this for? Anyway, this is Miami. And she said, Julia, if this was us, we'd want people to help us. And that night I met Sheriff Bierweiler, and he came up and introduced himself to me and said, Miss Jinkens, I'm going to ride shotgun to Miami on this semi with this loaded ice. And I thought, are they hijacking those trucks going down there to get it was an interesting lesson to learn. And of course we couldn't fill a semi, we probably fit half of it. And then they put in other things for emergency supplies.
So Hernando County sent a semi-truck with supplies?
Yes, and the prisoners loaded it for us. And I got to thinking, ice is priceless. They must have had to need that for medicine to keep the power had gone, and I'm sure it was weak, so it was horrible down there. My son and I was involved with sports again in the football realm because my son Tim and Jerome Brown, that was from our hometown here, became good friends. And Jerome was killed in a car wreck when he was 27 years old. It's a shame. He died way too young. But a memory of him, I'd like to tell, I told you that we did the dance and had the band and all for the seniors down at the fairgrounds. So I was down there with them on that Friday night, I think 1983. We're close, I guess. Well, anyway, he and my son come in. It was almost midnight, and I saw Jerome, and I said, Jerome, I want you on the microphone up here on stage. I want you to sing karaoke with me. And he said, nope, I'm not doing it. And he started to walk out the fairgrounds door. I chased after him with the microphone, and I said, if you don't come back in here and sing with me, I'm going to tell your mother. And do you know that big talking guy turned right around and come back up that stage, and he sang not one song with me, he sang 3. And I could not wait to tell his mother that. It showed me the coaches may yell at Jerome, but when it come down to it, he still respected older people and his elders. And I said to his mother, Annie Bell, you've done a good job raising him. He wasn't going to do it for the coaches, but he would do it for his parents. And what a neat guy he was. It was a good memory of the old days.
You talked about the torch coming through here. I understand that in 1996 something happened involving you and the Olympic torch.
Did not know. I thought they were playing a joke on me. I got a letter one day. The letter said to me, you have been picked, I think it said, as a community hero or something to that effect. And we will be there in your town for 30 minutes, which was a big thing that day. And they brought their own stage. It was a portable stage. The Olympic Committee did that. And the children at school bought me the torch. It was $275, and they brought their pennies. I was so proud that they did that.
Which school?
At Brooksville Elementary. We made a big ceremony of that. And I remember saying to the Olympic Committee, I'd like to buy an extra torch for my grandchildren, and they did not allow it at all. They did not want it to go commercial. The torch wasn't sacred, it was that flame, and it was being lit all over this country, and they didn't want it, they wanted to stop it from going the commercial way.
And where's the torch now?
It's in, the city council has one up there, but it's with my family, it's still at the restaurant, the Red Mule, in town here.
So you can see it any time at the Red Mule, right?
Yes, and someday, my kids, it's history, really, and the kids at school keep saying, well, if you were a hero, Miss Jinkens, did you save a life? They think I've helped pull somebody out of drowning or in a fire or something, and I keep telling the kids, no, I've never saved a life, but I've touched a few.
Perfect. Describe what's
That's
going
down
on
at
there.
the Town Barn Park where they put the stage up, and you can see all those children wanted to do was just see what they're doing, just touch the torch.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And you see the base of that torch, they defused it from the bottom when they got through with my ceremony, and they didn't want you walking around town with that torch. See, it was being guarded. And I can remember one thing which I appreciate now more than ever. They said, take no gifts from the crowd. And I didn't know what they meant by that. I thought everybody loved sports, and you know, they'd all be, those people standing out there, they're all fans. And they said, no, don't take a bottle of water or a box of candy, flowers. And I see now, look what has happened in the years later at Boston and all. And they had police on both sides of me. It was the torch they were
Guarding.
going to guard, and they did an excellent job on it. Well, if you want to get an award for being the town beggar, that is exactly what I was. That was
Good.
given to me last October.
That's great. And that says the Great Brooksvillian of the Year 2012. Looks like it says recognized for her outstanding efforts and contributions on behalf of the citizens of the city of Brooksville, Florida, October 11th, 2012.
Now, can you imagine getting rewarded for something that I love doing? It is
It sounds like a good plan to me.
No, it was no hardship. I'd go into these people and in this town, and they were so good to me. If they hadn't been, I wouldn't have gone on with it. But they wrote the checks, and I took all the glory. And isn't that nice to get rewarded? When I left Clearwater and came up here, I can remember friends in Clearwater said, you go to your local library, it will become your best friend. And I know exactly what they're talking about. When I came up here and couldn't find entertainment and I was too busy complaining, moving, I thought I was like a child in a candy store when I went in that library and saw all those books. Yeah, that became my best friend and still is. So.
Where do you see Hernando County going from here? I know earlier you spoke about the differences between the history of Brooksville and the commercialism of Spring Hill. How do you see those developing? Are they headed the right way, you think?
Oh, I love it when they're starting to talk. Yes, yes, yes. I noticed this year the big thing is Chinsigat out here. It's an old-fashioned manner, and you got good people in there that are pushing this forward and working hard. And I always remember Jan Knowles and Virginia Jackson doing the Heritage Museum. There's always people in every town that are going to be the ones that'll take the hard work of this. But if you've got people like that are that dedicated, yes, it'll go on. And really, I just love to see this end of it, the historical. And don't destroy it, and restore it is what I'm trying to say. And I think that's the way that the business part of it will be in the other part of the county. The airport will be busy, busy, busy. And then we have the sleepy end of this town. I love Spring Lake for its atmosphere out there, and it never did develop big time, and maybe that's best. Let it be something of the old with the new.